Happy Thanksgiving. I hope everybody had a fabulous Thanksgiving break. A bunch to discuss, in particular, the college football playoff. I feel like there are 11 teams that are locked and loaded. I'll break it all down for you. Hunter Biden is pardoned by Joe Biden, as I told you for years would happen. Everybody's trying to react like that's a huge shock. We'll dive into that. What do we expect in the conference championship games? I will discuss all of that as well. Just sort of organization purposes, doing the show today, doing the show tomorrow, and then I leave for Israel. So I am on the road starting Wednesday afternoon. I fly to Israel Thursday evening, and then I'll be in Israel all next week. So not a ton of OutKick shows. If you're wondering where I am, you might hop on social media and be like, oh, there's Clay. He's in Jerusalem. Now I understand why there's no OutKick show right now. But I will be back. I'm looking forward to going to Israel. I've never been before. Like I said, I will be there for a week. I'm doing Clay and Buck from Israel on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. And then I'll be back home for Christmas. But I want to tell you, Prize Picks, best way to get in on all the sports action out there in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, Texas. If you're feeling left out, you can sign up in all those states. Only real money daily fantasy platform, injury insurance policy, so your lineups will stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half, doesn't return, Prize Picks will keep your lineup live. Takes under a minute to make those picks, more or less. It's super easy, and you can download the app today. Use code OutKick to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code OutKick for $50 after the first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's run the college football playoff game. Okay? I believe there are 11 teams that are in right now. Potentially there is one team still to be filled in. I say potentially because we don't know exactly how all of this is going to break out. Okay, let's start here. What does a breakdown look like? This is in no particular order. The Big Ten has got 4 teams in. Oregon is in. Penn State is in. Ohio State is in. Indiana is in. All 4 of those teams are going to be in the 12-team playoff. Oregon and Penn State, we know, are playing for the Big Ten championship. I think likely, although we'll see, the number 1 overall seed to be the winner of that game. I say likely because what if Texas comes back and beats Georgia, and then Texas is 12-1 and Penn State is 12-1? Maybe you make the argument Texas has a better resume than Penn State. Again, to be determined, but that would be Texas vanquishing Georgia and eliminating their one loss. Penn State still would have lost to Ohio State at home. My argument would be 12-1 Texas would deserve to be the overall number 1 seed. But we'll get into that in a bit. SEC, 3 teams are in. Texas, Georgia, and Tennessee. Locked and loaded, that is 7. Notre Dame is in. That is 8. The winner of Boise State and UNLV is going to be in. That is 9. In the 10 spot is going to be the Big 12 champion, which is the winner of Iowa State against Arizona State. 11. The ACC champion is going to be in, either the winner, Clemson or SMU. That is your 11-team college football playoff spots all taken. 4 from the Big Ten, 3 from the SEC, 1 for sure from the ACC, 1 for sure from the Big 12, Notre Dame, and your non-Power 5 champ. That is 11 total bids. That leaves 1 team. Who should the 12th team be? Well, I think it's implicated massively by what happens in the ACC championship game. If Clemson beats SMU, I think SMU 11-2 will get into the college football playoff as the final team. That is my prediction. That is my expectation. If, however, SMU beats Clemson, then you have a real battleground. And by the way, you would still have arguments, right? 11-2 SMU, 9-3 Bama, 9-3 South Carolina, 9-3 Ole Miss, 10-2 Miami. You would have a lot of different teams kind of dancing around out there saying, pick me, pick me. But to me, if SMU loses to Clemson, Clemson steals a bid, but I still think 11-2 SMU would get in, assuming, again, there are variables, right? SMU could get blown out 42-3. Assuming a relatively close game, then I think SMU would get in. But if SMU wins, we know Clemson is out. We know Clemson has absolutely no ability to be the nominee in the 12-team playoff. And then the fight really starts because you have 9-3 Alabama, 9-3 Ole Miss, 9-3 South Carolina, 10-2 Miami. One of those teams would get the 12th playoff spot. And you guys are fighting tooth and nail over who you think that team would be. I think it would be Alabama. I'm not saying that I necessarily think that Alabama is the right pick. I'm just saying I think Alabama would be the final pick. But let's talk for a minute about the teams that are in the mix for that 12th team, for that 12th spot in the playoff. And let me make a bit of an argument on their behalf for why I think they should be in. Okay, if you are a South Carolina fan, your argument is South Carolina is the best team right now that is available for that 12th spot. In recent weeks, they have beaten Missouri. They just beat Clemson on the road. They are 9-3. They have no bad losses. The problem is, well, let me first give you what the poll voters said. The poll voters out there said that you guys believe, again, the question I asked was, who is the best team right now? Not who has the best resume. Who do you think is the best team right now? 43,000 of you voted. 47% of you said South Carolina is the best team. 30% of you said Alabama is the best team. 20% of you said Ole Miss is the best team. 3% of you said Mizzou. So I put all of the 9-3 SEC teams, and there are 4 of them, out there, and nearly half of you said South Carolina. So a huge percentage of voters in this poll said South Carolina is the best team available. And by the way, those numbers haven't moved very much. So I don't think it's a situation where, oh, this thing got shared on a message board or one fan group was more interested in voting than another. The numbers have pretty much stayed consistent after the first 1,500 or so votes came in, even though, according to this, 43,503 of you voted in the poll. Okay, so what do we think here? Again, I made the case for South Carolina. Downside for South Carolina. They lost to Alabama and they lost to Ole Miss, right? We're kicking Mizzou to the curb. I don't think anybody would really argue that Mizzou is the best 9-3 SEC team. South Carolina lost to the other 2 9-3 teams. They got beat pretty soundly by Ole Miss in Columbia, and they lost to Alabama by a couple of points. So I think South Carolina is the best team right now. They definitely don't have the best resume. And unlike a lot of people, I try to stay committed to principle. And when teams have the same record, I think the team that won the head-to-head matchup should be above the team that lost. And I was talking about this with my 14-year-old Alabama fan son. And I said, Alabama fans now want to say, oh, head-to-head should be dispositive. We beat South Carolina head-to-head, so we should be in over them. But the week before, they lost to Oklahoma. They were all saying, well, yeah, we lost to Tennessee head-to-head, but it was a close game, and we have a better overall resume than them, even though we have the same record. And what did your boy say? Tennessee should be ranked above Alabama. Head-to-head, when you have otherwise similar resumes, the head-to-head, and by similar resumes, I mean same record in conference, that kind of thing, head-to-head, as it has been used throughout history, is oftentimes the first tiebreak. In every level of sport that you have ever played, I made this argument back in the day. Adam, look it up. When TCU and Baylor both finished 11-1, if I'm remembering correctly, way back when, and they got bumped down to like number 5 because they didn't have an official champion. They had co-champions. I said, this is crazy. Baylor, I believe, beat TCU, if I'm remembering correctly. I could have it backwards. I think this was 2014, first year of the 14 playoff. I said, you gotta have the champ be the team that actually won the head-to-head. And then what happened was Ohio State demolished Wisconsin, and then Ohio State got in as the 4th, and then they went on and they won the championship that year. They beat Alabama, and then they beat Oregon. I believe I am recalling that correctly. I think that is the way that 2014 playoff selection went down. And Adam is saying, good research. Consistent. How do you know Baylor is better than TCU? Because there is a scoreboard that says so. Baylor and TCU, they finished with the same record. Baylor beat TCU, and so I said Baylor should be crowned the Big 12 champ. Big 12 refused to do it. They didn't have a tie-break scenario. They didn't have a conference championship game then. They added one later. Baylor ends up, if I remember correctly, 5. TCU ends up 6. Ohio State gets in. To me, Baylor should have been crowned as the Big 12 champ. Didn't happen. So, why do I bring all of this up? Head-to-head should be dispositive. And that, to me, is the best argument that you have for Alabama. Alabama went 9-3. Yes, they got whipped by Oklahoma. Yes, they lost to Tennessee. Yes, they lost to Vanderbilt. They went 1-3 on the road in the SEC, but they did beat Missouri. Their one road win was over 8-4 LSU, and they also beat Georgia. Kind of a big deal. Okay? So to me, 9-3 Alabama with the head-to-head win over South Carolina and an otherwise very similar resume, finishing 5-3 in conference, Alabama should be above South Carolina. And the fact that South Carolina lost that game bumps them down. Now, Lane Kiffin made a pretty strong argument. A lot of people are ignoring Ole Miss and not talking about the 9-3 Ole Miss schedule out there. And I do think it's worthy of sharing the argument on behalf of Ole Miss. I'm reading. Ole Miss has 9 wins, outscoring their opponents 390-94. And remember, South Carolina lost to both. South Carolina beat Ole Miss in Columbia as well. So Ole Miss people are arguing it should come down to Ole Miss versus Alabama. Ole Miss has outscored their opponents by more than Alabama. In the 3 losses, Ole Miss was outscored 73-60. That's a total of 13 points. In the 3 losses, Alabama was outscored 88-55. That's a total of 33 points. Common opponents. Both Ole Miss and Alabama beat Georgia. Ole Miss won by 18. Alabama won by 7. Both beat South Carolina. Ole Miss won by 24 on the road at South Carolina. Alabama won by just 2. Difference. Alabama did beat LSU by 29. Ole Miss lost to LSU by 3 in overtime. Ole Miss beat Oklahoma by 12. Alabama lost to Oklahoma by 21. This argument is Ole Miss should be in the playoff over Alabama, but Bama is the bigger brand and more than likely will get in over Ole Miss. That was shared by Lane Kiffin, and he tagged the College Football Playoff Committee in it. So that is the argument in favor of Ole Miss over Alabama. So Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina all finished 9-3. All three have cases that they should be the 12th college football team. Who else? Miami. Miami goes 10-2 and was otherwise going to be in the playoff and in the ACC championship game, but they gave up a 21-point road lead to Syracuse. Syracuse comes back to win 42-38, and now Miami's on the outside looking in. What is the argument for Miami? It is that the Hurricanes at 10-2 deserve better treatment than a 9-3 SEC team. Here's the problem. I mean, Miami would say we beat Florida by more than the contending SEC teams did. Ole Miss lost to Florida. They would argue that Miami shouldn't be punished because they happened to lose to Georgia Tech, and we'll talk about Georgia Tech, Georgia here in a moment, and that they lost a close game against Syracuse. Miami played a lot of close games. Their defense has been questionable. I don't think, personally, that Miami has as good of an argument as 9-3 top SEC team, which is why in my rankings, and you can go read my starting 11 rankings, I think I have, humbly as always, the perfect starting 11. Okay? The 12-team playoff here is, I think, laid out pretty well. I think it's rational. I think it is logical. I think it is the way that this whole thing should go down. What do I mean by that? My number one overall team, and these are projections, so I don't know exactly how, obviously these conference title games are going to come out. But I'm projecting Oregon to beat Penn State, so I have Oregon as my number one overall team. I think Georgia in Atlanta will beat Texas and be my number 2 overall seed. I got SMU winning the ACC, and then I have Boise State beating UNLV and being higher ranked than the Big 12 champ. So, and by the way, I don't agree with this. I think the top 4 teams should get buys regardless of if they win a conference championship or not. I don't think we should be elevating SMU and Boise State automatically into the top 4. I actually think that based on the way the season is likely to end, Oregon, Georgia, Penn State, and Texas all deserve buys. That is, if you made the SEC championship and you made the Big Ten championship, I think you're the 4 best teams all year. So that's who I think the 4 bye teams should be, and you would rank them based on who wins. But I think you should get a bye if you are in the top 4 at the end of the year, and I don't think you should be punished by what happens in the college football conference championship games. But that's not the system we have in place. I think it's confusing a lot of fans, which is why I have Oregon 1, Georgia 2, SMU, Boise State as my 3-4. In the 5 spot, I've got Penn State. I could be persuaded that Texas has the better resume, and maybe Texas should be my 5 seed as opposed to my 6. But I've got Penn State 5, and I've got Texas 6. Okay? That, to me, is basically the top 6. I think you have to have Penn State 5 and Texas 6. Then I've got Notre Dame 7, because I'm not rewarding Notre Dame because they don't have to play a conference championship game. So to me, Notre Dame should be no higher than 7th. And then we've got a battle I've got Tennessee at 8. Other people have Ohio State. I've got Tennessee as my 8 seed. My 9 seed, I've got Ohio State. That matters because I think that decision is going to be about who hosts a home playoff game. And then I've got Indiana at 10, Alabama at 11, and Arizona State as my predicted Big 12 champion as the 12 seed. So in my playoff rankings, and the committee will give theirs tomorrow, I would have Penn State hosting Arizona State. I would have Texas hosting Alabama. I would have Notre Dame hosting Indiana. And I would have Tennessee hosting Ohio State. So there's some pretty good games in here, right? Penn State, Arizona State, we'll talk about this in a sec. Texas, Bama, book it. And by the way, you could flip Indiana and Alabama if you wanted to avoid a SEC versus SEC game, which I'm not sure the committee would do, but kind of think it would be better television. And then you could get Notre Dame hosting Bama instead of Indiana and Texas hosting Indiana. Maybe that's better television. And then you'd have Tennessee hosting Ohio State. What you're seeing here is there's a flaw in the system by which this is created. Penn State, if they lose to Oregon, would get to host a home playoff game against Arizona State, who they would be a big favorite over. And then they would get to play Boise State in the second round, which is almost like a pretty easy ride to the Final Four, whereas your number 1 seed, Oregon, yes, they get a bye, but their first matchup on a neutral site field would be Ohio State or Tennessee. That's a lot tougher than where I have Penn State coming in the 5 spot. So just FYI there. Several different things about the game over the weekend. Huge college football games. And I can already see I'm going to need to slide my discussion of Trump as the Biden, Hunter Biden pardon, because I still have so much to say about college football. Texas A&M. Texas whipped Texas A&M's butt. Other than a blocked kick and a pick six, A&M, by and large, could not move the football. Texas ran all over Texas A&M. They walked into a crazy, difficult environment in Aggie land, and they just kicked ass and took names. I've been critical of Texas this season because their schedule has not been very tough compared to a Georgia or an Alabama, heck, even compared to a Tennessee. But they went and they kicked butt overwhelmingly. Congratulations to Texas for getting that win. What about Ryan Day? What about Ryan Day losing that game to a 21-point underdog Michigan team? That's why I have dropped Ohio State all the way to 9, because I don't think the Buckeyes, after that performance in their final game, deserve to host a home playoff game. I know they beat Indiana. I know they beat Penn State. But when you lose at home as a 21-point favorite and look as bad as Ohio State did, why should you be rewarded with a home playoff game? If the committee does what the AP did and what the coaches poll did and puts Tennessee above Ohio State, Tennessee deserves to host the home playoff game, I believe, over Ohio State. I really do. Now, we'll see what the committee does. It's the only real seeding question, because I think the loser of the Big Ten championship, the loser of the SEC championship, and Notre Dame are all going to host home playoff games. So the real only decision is, do you give Ohio State or Tennessee a home playoff game? I would give Tennessee. I laid out my rationale for it. That performance was an embarrassment for Ohio State. 4 straight losses. They were out-physicaled. That final drive after they gave up a field goal was an embarrassment. They got bailed out. Michigan can't even really throw the football. They passed for like 65 yards. They threw 2 critical interceptions. And yet Ohio State still lost at home in the shoe for a fourth straight year. Again, major issues with Ryan Day. I do find it to be the case that Ryan Day is a bit of a victim of what we've seen, what I call like Peyton Manning complex, which is you say the guy can't win the big game, and you discount in the process all the big games the guy's actually won. Let's be honest. Beating Penn State on the road was a big win. Beating Indiana on the road was a big win. Ryan Day has had several big wins in his career, including a couple this year. But the way it's defined is whatever game he loses is the big game, and he never gets credit for whatever game he wins. That's a problem. That's a challenge associated with this sort of scenario in general. But I do understand why Ohio State Buckeye fans are looking around and saying, we always find a way to lose this kind of game. And there is some truth to that. And we're spending top dollar, and we're not getting the results that we should. Credit Tennessee, Josh Heupel. They go down 14-0 against Vanderbilt. Looks like, oh my goodness, the pressure may get to them. Nico comes out and balls out. And let me just say this. Since the second half of the game began against Alabama, Nico has, that was on October 19th, I think. If I'm remembering correctly, it might have been October 26th, one of those weekends. Since then, Nico has 12 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's starting to have the light bulb moment occur. He's starting to play at a higher level. And if he hits a couple of big plays, Thornton for 86 yards against Vanderbilt, that tied the game up. I believe Tennessee was trailing 17-10 at that point. If he hits a couple of big plays, Tennessee's offense looks tremendously different. We know they can run the ball with Dylan Sampson. A lot of these quarterbacks, you know what you got with them, and that's good because some of them are really talented. But when you have a young freshman quarterback who's only started now 13 games in his career, it feels like the light bulb is starting to come on. Tennessee's got a very solid defense. There is the possibility out there that Tennessee could go to the next level, the proverbial next level on the offensive side of the ball. A couple of other things here that I wanted to hit you with. Congratulations to Deion Sanders on getting to 9 wins. That is in no way worthy of being criticized. Deion has been ripped to the high heavens across the college football landscape. I believe Colorado, I sent out a tweet, I believe Colorado has one winning season with 9 or more wins in basically the last 20 years. And in year 2, Deion got Colorado to 9-3. He's going to have a guy on his team, Travis Hunter, who wins the Heisman Trophy. By any objective measure, Deion Sanders has been fabulously successful at Colorado. Initially, he was overhyped. Then I think he was over-criticized. I think we can fairly analyze him at this point. 9-3 in year 2 is a tremendous accomplishment for Colorado football. Now, are there criticisms you can level? Certainly. Has Deion built Colorado to last for years and years to come with impeccable recruiting classes? No. But this is the world we live in now where, because of the transfer portal, nobody really knows what kind of team they're going to have next year. Every team's going to have 35 new players every year. And you may think I'm crazy on that. I don't think so. Every team is going to sign 20-some-odd freshmen, and every team is going to bring in 10 or 15 different transfers, lose 10 or 15 different players to transfer. Every year, it's a little bit like the NFL, where many of the teams are completely being remade on the fly. And so I do think all of this factors in, and you have to say Deion did an incredible job. And I want to make sure I get the stat right because I did my research on Colorado football and put up the post on Saturday about Colorado football. or I guess it was maybe Friday night, whenever Colorado played. I guess that was a Friday game, right? So I'm going to have to scroll back a little ways. And to me, this is an incredible accomplishment, and he deserves to be praised for what he was able to do. And it's not an easy accomplishment. And I want to make sure. Deion deserves, this is what I tweeted 3 days ago. Deion deserves a ton of credit for Colorado going 9-3 this season. He took over a team with one winning season since 2006, and he's going to post the second best regular season in 20 years. It's impressive no matter how you analyze or critique it. Flags. Everybody's got a take on flags. We saw fights. I said flags. We saw fights at Florida State, North Carolina, NC State, Michigan, Ohio State. We saw a Arizona State forking. All of these different big rivalry games, and I'm sure I'm missing others. Much of it seems to have been precipitated by the flag planting. What do we think about this? I got a lot of thoughts. But let me start with this. There's a difference between winning and celebrating and winning and taunting. Everybody who has ever played a sport on any level knows the difference. Again, you all know it when you see it. You have all experienced it in your life, no matter what level sports you finished playing at, whether it's Little League, whether it's pro sports. There is a difference between winning and celebrating with your team and winning and taunting the other team. To me, most fighting doesn't come from winning and celebrating. It comes from winning and taunting. And when you take a flag on the road and you try to have your viral TikTok or Instagram moment and plant your flag at midfield on top of the logo of the team that you just beat, that is taunting. You are, in my opinion, setting forth the resulting cavalcade of brawling, shoving, fighting. The fracas that ensues is created by the taunt. Shouldn't be a place for taunting. Now, some of you out there say, it's just a flag. I don't know why you care. Here's where I'm going to defend the kids, and they are kids, they're young men, who are getting in fights over this. You can't simultaneously criticize the kids on these teams for taking NIL money and having no loyalty and not caring about the team name on their helmet or the team name on the front of their jersey, and then get mad at them when they want to fight over the logo, the brand that they represent, being disrespected on their home field. To me, that actually shows how much blood, sweat, and tears these kids are putting into trying to win a game. And I don't blame them. I really don't. There's a difference between winning and celebrating and winning and taunting. We all know that. When you try and plant your flag on someone's logo, that's taunting. And I think you deserve to get your ass kicked when you do it. I'm sorry, we all want to sugarcoat everything, and we all want to pretend. No, when you're taunting someone in their house, you deserve to get your ass kicked. Remember back in the day when I think it was it T.O. who got the touchdown and ran on to celebrate on the Dallas Cowboys star logo? Do you guys remember that? And put his hands up like, I'm the star. I think this was before T.O. came to play for the Cowboys. And if I'm getting this wrong, Adam, you can look it up. I didn't blame some. That's professionals, which is different than college, because then you're just protecting a brand logo that makes your owner a billionaire, right? Which is maybe you can argue supportable, but it's not your state logo. It's not your state flag. Like this point of pride in pro sports to me seems less
than in high school sports. But I didn't blame people for wrecking him. When that happens, it was T.O. with the 49ers, and if I remember correctly, Emmitt Smith later in that game came running out and put a football on the star logo after a touchdown, like, hey, big boy, this is our house. It's one thing to win and celebrate. It's another thing to win and taunt. And I understand why guys, when they're being taunted on their home field, take exception to it and want to grab those flags and want to fight it out. I really do. Now, to me, the suspension should be levied on the school that is taunting, because they're the ones that are precipitating the fight. And I don't see it as being a very difficult decision. Now, I think in general, this all stems from Baker Mayfield, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember this being a thing until Baker Mayfield took the Oklahoma flag and did it at Ohio State's home field. And it's gone mega viral on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, and everybody's like, oh, look at what a badass he is. And now everybody wants that moment on social media for themselves. And Baker Mayfield said, this is not a big deal. We do this all the time at the Oklahoma-Texas game. Yeah, but Oklahoma-Texas is a 50-50 stadium. I don't think anybody cares if on your home field you win and then you take that flag and you stamp it on your logo and you celebrate with your fans. That's not what happened here. Michigan did it at Ohio State. NC State did it at North Carolina. Florida did it at Florida State. The fights don't come when you win on your home field and you post your flag on your logo. It's when you put your flag on the opposing team's logo in their home stadium. That's taunting. And it has to be stopped unless we want the fighting to ensue. And it doesn't seem like a very difficult decision to me to figure out how to regulate this. You can't plant your flag on the opposing team's logo, and you can't dance on the logo, and you can't piss on the logo, and you can't defecate on the logo. This doesn't seem like particularly challenging to me. By the way, I want to tell you about Tunnel to Towers. I think we've got a Tunnel to Towers ad that needs to be up. And by the way, it reminded me of the Civil War. For those of you who are history nerds like me, the most disrespectful thing you could do was take somebody else's flag. If you got the regiment's flag, if you got their country's flag, it was a point of honor for you, and it was a point of dishonor for the opposing team. You could lose the opposing side, but you had to protect the flag at all costs. And one of the most honorable jobs you could have was to be the flag bearer. That was how they saw each other. You carried the flag. Everybody's trying to shoot you. Flag bearer goes down. Somebody else picks it up. You charge to the top of the ramparts. It definitely felt like an old school thing. You know what's overlapping there? Young men. Points of pride. Symbolism. I see the connection. And some of you probably knuckleheads played capture the flag back in the day. Nowhere near as serious, but that's how you won, was you took the other team's flag. For over 2 decades, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation has been there for our fallen and catastrophically injured first responders, military, and the Gold Star families. If a spouse dies or is catastrophically injured in the line of duty, the foundation provides the surviving family members with a mortgage-free smart home. Many times mortgage-free smart homes. They've provided over 1,200 mortgage-free homes, with new ones being announced almost daily, and now they promise to eradicate homelessness amongst the veteran population. Learn more about the Foundation's mission, impact, and how you can help support our nation's heroes by visiting T2T.org. That is T2T.org. Let me repeat it one more time, T2T.org. Go there today. I love everything Frank Siller does. I donated my time in October, went up and played in their charity golf event, emceed it. Also donated my own money there. T2T.org is that website. Go get hooked up today, T2T.org. Final thought. Speaking of signs, speaking of flags, I was down on 30A, America's best beaches, between Destin, Panama City Beach, a man named Marvin Peavy and his wife Paige. They have a home on 30A. They have had banners up for 4 years now, since May of 2020. I first noticed them when he had up a Trump 1 banner for a long time after the 2020 election. It's impossible to miss. I've got pictures up of me. I went over to his house on Saturday, took him a bottle of Weller bourbon to say, hey, thank you for what you've been doing here with the banners that you've put up. I bet a lot of you listening to me right now have seen them at some point in time. They were absolutely fantastic. They are patriots, and I had an awesome time visiting with Marvin on 30A, and I hope that many of you will continue to be patriots as well, and I hope you had fabulous Thanksgiving. I want to finish with one more thought. Arrest reports from the big Texas A&M Texas game. 2 men wearing reflective vests. This is from Texas A&M Police. 2 men wearing reflective vests and hard hats entered the stadium with fake construction credentials, arrested for criminal trespass. A guy named Rusty Surrett said, I just found the arrest reports for these 2. So they dress up as fake construction workers to try to sneak in and watch the game. They get busted. A 21-year-old from College Station and a 22-year-old from the Houston area were arrested. The names on their fake credentials were, and I swear this is amazing, Harry Ascrack and Duncan McCockiner. All right, so Harry Ascrack and Duncan McCockiner, 21-year-old from College Station, 22-year-old from Houston. Can you imagine, one, being these kids? Very funny, until they got arrested. 2, can you imagine being the mom and or dad who got the phone call that your kids had been arrested for putting on construction gear, trying to sneak into the biggest game of the year in Texas, and that they had made up fake credentials where their names were Harry Ascrack and Duncan McCockiner? I'm going to talk tomorrow about Hunter Biden getting pardoned, but I got to be honest with you. If I were the judge in College Station and this case is in front of me, I am tossing the charges and giving these American patriots, Harry Ascrack and Duncan McCockiner, some sort of community service. There is no way I can keep a straight face when these guys are in front of me. I would love to be the judge. I would love to be the lawyer. Even, I bet, the dads may have pretended that they were upset about this. There is no SEC dad that I have ever met that if his son got arrested for pretending to be Duncan McCockiner sneaking into an SEC game or Harry Ascrack, there's no way you'd be able to keep a straight face. Your wife might be legitimately angry. No man who has ever been to an SEC football game is keeping a straight face if he gets a call that his kids have been arrested for this reason. I love all of you. I bet that arrest and the hysterical nature of it could even bring together Aggies and Longhorns. I will see all of you guys tomorrow. We'll also do the college football gambling conference championship game edition. I am headed to Israel this week. I cannot wait to go, but that is where my horizon heads. Right now I'm off to the bench in the gym because guess what? I'm kind of a beast for a fat dad of 3. I will see you guys DBAP unless you need to SBAP. This has been OutKick, the show.